Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Mayor, our regularly scheduled interviews with Mayor Dan Rizzo, where we talk about a number of issues and subjects going on within the city. Welcome, Dan. Good to see you again.
It's great to be back.
We have on our first item on our discussion today is talking about the budget for this year. And then this is the time, I guess, you're having a series of budget meetings coming up to get to the point where you submit the budget actually to the council, or has that been done already?
Yeah, no, we submitted the budget to the city council back at the end of May, and which is typically about the time we shoot for. By law, we have 175 days from the initial organizational meeting, which would have taken place in January, January 4th, January 5th, somewhere from there. So, but it's always been pretty much our goal as an administration, not only mine, but prior administrations, to try to give the council 3 or 4 weeks to go over the budget and you know, make any recommendations or cuts that they see fit. But we presented a budget that we feel is responsible, that we feel maintains a certain level of services to the residents of our community, which you know, obviously is an obligation that we have. And so now what happens is we have a series of committee meetings that's chaired by the chairman of Ways and Means, Councilor Richard Penta. Yep. And he will have each department head up before his committee, where he'll talk, and his committee members will talk with department heads about the various line items that are within the budget, and then hopefully vote on the budget prior to June 30th. That's all, again, always the goal, because that will give our department heads time to plan accordingly for their upcoming fiscal year. So yeah, you know, it was a long process. As you may know, we are changing the way that we present the budget. Yep. We are, you know, we've heard this word for years now about transparency, and it's almost becoming almost kind of an outdated buzzword, but people want transparency, and we try to provide as much transparency as we possibly can. So the budget is online. The final budget will be online, so people can go in and take a look at it. You know, like I say, it's our goal to continue down the road that we've gone. We've been fortunate. We've received 2 consecutive bond upgrades from Moody's, our rating agency. And we have certified for 2 years in a row now the highest amount of free cash this city has ever certified, which it's been just about $3.2 million over the last 2 years. So, you know, we're very, very encouraged by the way that we've been able to manage the city's finances. That hopefully is going to be the road that we're going to continue down to, you know, obviously, you know, handle the city's finances, you know, responsibly, and set us on a very positive fiscal course. If you look, you know, some people, you know, might gloss over at the fact that we've received 2 bond upgrades, but when you think about the fact that in all the years that the city has put bonds out for bid, the most that we've ever had anybody bid on bonds that we've put out to the market has been maybe 2 or 3 bidders at a time. Mm-hmm. And the lowest we've ever paid in interest is right around 2%, which in and of itself is low. But when you think about, because of the upgrade in our financial position with respect to the rating agencies, we had 8 bidders on these last bonds that we put out, and the interest rate that the taxpayers will be paying is 0.85%. Wow. So, you know, when you think about the millions and millions of dollars that are being put out to bid, out to bond, and what that means to the taxpayers in terms of interest savings, it's very, very significant. So it's funny, because when I bring this news to the city council, you know, we'll spend much more time talking about potholes and talking about issues that, you know, obviously are still important, but, you know, that to me as mayor of the city is something that is very, very important, and it happens to be important in a way that's very positive for the taxpayers.
Well, it also impacts your ability to fill those potholes, I probably.
Very good point. Very good point.
You brought up a point, a term, free cash. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about free cash and the reserves. You want to explain free cash and reserves and how they kind of interact with the budget?
Yeah. So I remember when I first got into municipal government as a city councilor, someone explained free cash to me. They said, it's not cash and it's not free. So, but what free cash is, essentially, is what we have left over from last prior fiscal year. So, in other words, when you project your revenues, we like to be conservative. So we predict revenues in a way that we can substantiate quite easily. With respect to expenses, we, not to say we intentionally overstate expenses, but we want to make sure that, we plan for the unexpected as best we can. So, oftentimes, and by the way, department heads have a mandate that says just because you're budgeted X amount doesn't mean you need to spend that amount.
Right.
This is what's there allocated because we feel as though there's a strong possibility that that will be needed. Oftentimes, it might not be. And that's why at the end of the year, you'll see these transfers going back and forth. We're going to take, $10,000 from this account and put $10,000 in that account because there might be a deficit in one account and an overage in another. So, so at the end of the day, once all those transfers are done and once everything all levels out, you're left with a balance. That, you could have a negative free cash balance, which is something obviously we never want,
Yep.
but, that could happen. Like I say, we've been fortunate in my first 2 years to certify, like I say, a total of close to $6.5 million of free cash. So, which again, that all plays into when we go to Moody's and we give our annual report and ask for, a bond rating. That all plays into it. So, early on, when I first became mayor, I had a conversation with Mayor Menino, then Mayor Menino at the time, and something he said to me that makes perfect sense, and I think it's a great formula to follow. He said, if your finances works, your city works. And so we spend an awful lot of time looking at our finances, and that's why, sometimes, obviously the city council has a role to play. I was a city councilor for 12 years, so I recognize that. But when I go and I present something to the city council, I'm not going up there willy-nilly and just saying, hey, by the way, I need money. We've thought it through. We have a plan to pay for it. And so, it's, I think it's important for the public to know that while I respect obviously dialogue that goes back and forth, the administration never goes up there and asks for money that we don't feel we can ever pay back or that we can handle as a municipality. I think I've demonstrated that in my first 2.5+ years in office so far, and hopefully that's going to be a path that we're going to continue down.
So net expenses at the end of the year, if you said you projected $10 to be spent over the year and you only spent $5 of it, the free cash is the $5 that you have left over at the end of the year.
Correct.
And that goes into the reserve?
That will go, well, by ordinance, 15% of all free cash goes into stabilization.
Stabilization.
So we'll still have free cash. Yep. And so, for example, this year, I'm asking the city council to help balance our budget by using $2.5 million of the $3.2 million we certified last year to balance the FY15 budget. And it's not uncommon. If you look at the state, they'll dip into stabilization. I'm not even dipping into stabilization. I'm dipping into our free cash that we had to balance this budget. But we are not unlike any other city or town. we're quite fortunate to have these reserves that we can tap into. Other cities and towns, I mean, I just talked to my counterpart in Malden, who said that they were facing up to 30 people having to lay off. So, you know, it can get difficult. It can get very difficult.
Well, yeah, and I was reading in the paper, I mean, you've got a couple of challenges this year. First and foremost, you're losing, I think it was $1 million from budget, rent-a-car.
Yeah.
You've lost some grant money that was available for police and fire and so forth, so.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so, but we have the ability to, you know, under Proposition 2.5, and I think just about every mayor, city manager, town manager in the Commonwealth, you know, unfortunately, because of the pressures that's put on cities and towns due to the lack of, you know, or the reduction in local aid that we've experienced over a period of years now, you know, that it's put on us as a municipality to find the wherewithal to keep these services going. I mean, as much as I wish people would come and pick up the trash for nothing, as much as I wish kids would go to school and we wouldn't have to pay our school teachers and administrators, or as much as, you know, we dial 911 and we expect the police or firemen to show up, you know, maybe, you know, wish I didn't have to necessarily pay them, but these are all things that we have to do as a community to make sure our city works and that our city is safe and that our city has, for example, a school system like the one we have where, you know, we just, as you know, became first in the nation as designated by the National Center for Urban School Transformation. So, you know, these are things that would not be possible if we did not keep up and be able to fund all the different programs and curriculums, for example, that we have in the high school. So, and throughout our entire school department. So, you know, it's a challenge, but you know, we continue on. You alluded to the $1 million we lost in excise tax and car rental surcharge fees. You know, but as I said, between new growth and the Prop 2.5 that we can go up, we're still able to meet those expenses. In fact, in the budget, you may have noticed I added 2 police officers. We're now up to 96 police officers. I think we were under 90 when I took over. And one of my priorities has been and continues to be to beef up and strengthen our public safety infrastructure here in the city. You know, as much as I said earlier, if your finances works, the city works. If we don't have safe neighborhoods and safe streets and people have that sense of security, then I believe that our quality of life as a city, as a community, is severely diminished. And so my commitment is going to stay there with respect to keep on trying to beef up our patrols, to give the police and fire departments all the tools they need so that, you know, when our citizens are in dire straits, that we have the best and highest trained departments to respond to those situations.
We're going to be doing a series of upcoming shows on the police department, an outgrowth of the Citizen Police Academy that I just completed and so forth. So we're going to be learning a lot more about what they're doing, some of the challenges they have in terms of resources and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's great.
You mentioned earlier about in the discussion about budgets, you know, discussions with the city council about potholes. And of course, there's a lot of people. I mean, it happens every year. Winter goes away, the snow starts to melt, the potholes start to come up, and of course the roads get really difficult. And you have the extra challenge this year of that major project on Winthrop Ave. You want to talk a little bit about what sort of work is being done with the road systems within the city?
Right. So there's a few different pieces to that. I'll take the first one, which you actually mentioned last, which was Winthrop Ave. Winthrop Ave was a repair that was necessitated as a result of a broken sewer line. Right. Now that sewer line was the point of exit for 20% of the city's sewerage. So it was a critical line that had to be fixed. The problem with that particular line was it was 25 feet below the ground. Now if you can just imagine 25 feet up from where we're sitting right now, and that's how deep that had to be dug to get to that pipe. And then to go a stretch to get that pipe fully fixed. It was really the type of emergency repair that, you really wouldn't wish on anybody. Now factor in the other lines that were in place.
I
We
was
had
just
an
gonna say that.
MWRA line, we had a gas line, we had to move the gas line completely to the other side of the street. There was a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of different agencies that had to work together. So it really was a very complicated project, but it had to be done. One of the byproducts that I think I should mention from that situation is the good news and the bad news. The good news is we fixed the sewer line. So now it'll be strictly sewage that goes through that line and goes out through the MWRA, and that's what we as a community will be charged for. The problem is when there was holes in that line, it was allowing for what we call inflow and infiltration. So water was getting into that sewer line, going out through the MWRA, and we were getting charged for it. The good news for McMacken Field was all that water you see out there had a place to go. Now that that line has been fixed, it kind of created another problem. I mean, McMacken Field never had great drainage, but because of that aging sewer line that we really didn't know until it reached that critical point when it collapsed, it had to be taking
carrying that
in
water
tons
away.
of water. And now that's not happening. So now we've actually scheduled a meeting, I believe, next week to talk with the parents and coaches from McMacken, our engineers from CDM Smith, and try to do what we can to help alleviate that problem, because I think the commitment I have to children in this community, and wanting to give them every resource I possibly can. Parks and playgrounds, absolutely, paramount in my mind, and to see that field and the condition it's in is it's heartbreaking, really. But our rec director, Michael Hinojosa, I give him strong accolades when it comes to finding fields to help the kids during this situation this year. And hopefully by the tail end of this year, or certainly by the time they start to play next year, maybe we'll have some sort of a resolution to start to drain that, to try and get a real permanent fix so that the kids don't have to worry every time we get half an inch of rain.
Yeah, and we'll stray away from the potholes for a second, because you mentioned the Parks and Recreation and the fields, and of course part of the new stadium build is going to be 3 new fields down at St. Mary's. Yeah.
Yep.
And when will that project take place?
Well, we're actually we have design drawings now being those are underway now.
Yep.
So we're really looking to get that project off the ground. I'd like to think by next spring, maybe.
Okay. Yep.
If at all possible, because that's going to be another tremendous complex once it's all completed. We'll have we have to replace what was at Hill Park before, but this will be with a state-of-the-art field, a really brand new softball field, and then the 2 Little League fields you have down there now, those will be brand new as well. So, if we can fix the flooding at McMacken, get these fields done, we'll have some real options for kids
fields,
and families.
And speaking of recreation and so forth, then there was another 2 projects actually going on within the city that I think are worth discussing, and that is through a grant that the city received through the state. You're going to be renovating, rehabbing 2 parks, right? The DeSalvo Park and the Louis Pasteur Park in Beachmont.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We were fortunate. We've been pretty fortunate with respect to the grants that we've received. These 2 grants, as you alluded to, it's $100,000 for each park. The only caveat to that was the city had to put up $50,000, which we identified through monies that were already designated to the DPW, and I believe there was another source of funding. But the bottom line is
Revere on the Move, I believe, and Revere Cares.
Yes, absolutely. So we were able to find those funds without having to work miracles. That money was already there. So we're going to be able to invest really $125,000 into
Each park.
playground.
That's correct.
And that's going to be really nice because those parks, as you know, as a resident of Beachmont, and I know as a resident very close by to DeSalvo Park, those two parks get an awful lot of use. And but as a result, because they're so widely used, sometimes they can go into disrepair pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, and they've been, I know the Louis Pasteur Park has probably been in existence for 15, 20 years when that park was built, because I remember it was a community built, so things break down over time.
Yeah,
and they need to be
absolutely.
replaced. And
Absolutely,
So,
and in particular with Louis Pasture Park, we've tried to piecemeal that together a little
know.
bit over time, and so sometimes the best thing to do is to just come in
Right.
and make it all new.
Okay.
So,
Well, if I could bring you back to the sore subject of potholes, sore to automobiles, particularly who hit them. What is happening relative to the fixing of potholes around the city and the streets?
so I've had people, and listen, there's nothing worse. I hate to hit a pothole. You know, people, you know, they've got flat tires, they've had other more serious damage as a result of the potholes. This was a very, very harsh and difficult winter. So difficult that the governor declared a state of emergency and allocated $30 million, $10 million to the state of Massachusetts, $20 million to cities and towns. The city of Revere received $117,000 to go out and just do pothole work. So we did about $20,000 of that money was done in-house with our own DPW for overtime and things like that. And the rest of the money went into our Chapter 90, which we're going to be undertaking this construction season, different roads across the city that were really torn up. You know, I mean, we had School Street that I know is horrible. I mean, you could take, you know, arguably, I know somebody that may be watching will say, well, what about my street?
Yeah,
What
well,
about
I was
my
just
street,
gonna-
right? So, I mean, trust me, if I could do every street in the city, I would. But some streets that are just highly traveled and in really, really bad disrepair, you know, Washington Avenue, that's, I mean, you know, if I, you know, we just look at the claims that come into our solicitor's office. People hit a pothole, they call the city and say, I want you to pay for my tire, and there's only so much money that the city has in their execution account to pay for those types of things. So, you know, we certainly can't pay for every flat tire that somebody has here in the city, but we can look and identify where these claims are coming from and try to make the necessary repairs to those roads. So I've talked with our Director of Planning, Frank Stringy. He has a plan in place. You know, safe to say there's a lot of streets that are on it. Reservoir Ave is in very, very poor shape. That'll be getting done. You know, but you know, there's just so many streets. So some we're going to tackle from that standpoint. We'll redo the entire street. Crest Ave is currently being done right now. We'll redo the entire street, the sidewalks, all that stuff. And then there'll be other streets that will just go in and patch up the potholes as best we can and continue on with our long-term capital improvement plan.
All right, great. And relative to potholes, if people see a street or an area that they think really needs to be addressed or is this pretty serious, where would they go to?
So, I mean, they have a number of resources. They can certainly call the mayor's office. We'd be happy to take their street and you know, pass that along to our city planner. They can call their ward counselor. The ward counselors oftentimes will take that information and present it to the city council in the form of a motion to have a particular street resurfaced. So, you know, there's a number of outlets that people have at their disposal. You know, safe to say, I don't drive down every street in the city every day, so it's hard for me to know. So I always tell people, I guess in the bigger picture, if there's an issue that people have, they should make it known. I mean, and we have plenty of ways to report things now. As you know, we have the See, Click, Fix program that people can just take a picture and forward their situation off to the city for us to handle. You know, they can always call the DPW. They have a new work management program that they will enter that particular complaint or that particular situation, and they will be able to follow up on that and prioritize it. So, and they can go to the city's website and they can report a claim there, and report an incident on our website, revere.org. So, and by the way, there's a lot of good information they can get on revere.org. We've updated that website. It's a lot more functional than it used to be. I'm not 100% happy with it, but it's light years ahead of where the city's website was, as you may recall, just a few years
Well,
ago.
and as one who uses it quite a bit, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, for sure. So looking to some of the events coming up this year, and starting off with National Night Out. I want to talk a little bit about some of the activity that will be taking place in the city, and frankly, I forget when it is. When is it?
Well, National Night Out is going to be Tuesday, August 5th.
Okay.
It is it really is a great night, and we're trying to resurrect that whole program. Up to just a couple years ago, the only place that would have any type of activity would be the Garfield School, and that's a credit to Councilor Novoselsky. He stayed with National Night Out. He promotes it. He's organized down there with volunteers. Done a terrific job with that. We, through our resident neighborhood organizational group, have been able to resurrect the National Night Out that used to take place at the Whalen School.
Yep.
And that, for the last couple of years, has been extremely successful. You know, our volunteers.
That's the West Revere group, is it?
No, well, no, this is the, I'm drawing a blank. The Revere,
Well, it'll come.
it'll come. It'll
Sorry
come.
about that.
My apologies to any members on that committee, because I see their faces. I'm trying to think of the name of the group.
Believe me, it happens
But
all too often.
but you know, safe to say that they have done just a terrific job in you know, resurrecting that whole program. You know, they do really a phenomenal job, and you know, so you know, we have movies that are shown. Obviously, big barbecues. The Revere Police Department gets involved. We've got games for kids, magic acts. It's just really, really a great night out. And what it does is it gives people the opportunity to mingle with their neighbors. That's something that I think has been lost over the last probably couple of decades. You know, years ago, I'm sure you remember, I remember, you know, neighbors would see each other routinely.
Yep.
Now everybody's so busy, everyone's running in different directions. This is one night that neighbors can all get together. Kids can play together, parents can intermingle, grandparents can intermingle, and you know, I think it just builds for stronger neighborhoods when you have that type of interaction.
Especially the social interaction. So we've got activities going on over at the Garfield and over at the Whalen.
Yes, the Garfield and the Whalen.
Those are the two primary areas that there'll be activities going on.
The Revere Neighborhood Advisory Group.
Oh, okay.
So
Very good.
my apologies to those members. They're hard-working members, and you know, they I'm sure are probably well, where this is June, I'm 100% positive that they're in full swing in planning right now. And so yeah, it's a great night out, and we have an awful lot of other events that are going on this summer. I know the rec department has been you know, actively at work, and I believe on their website has a list of all the activities that have been planned for this summer. Obviously, our sand sculpting festival that draws 500,000 people over the course of a 3-day period. That's been planned. It's July 18th through the 21st, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's 17, 18, 19, or somewhere in that area anyway, that weekend, yes.
Yeah, so really Friday the 18th it starts, and it goes Saturday, Sunday. But they've expanded the number of sculptors that have come in. Yes, so they just continue to expand and grow. As you know, last year the fireworks, they went from 1 barge to 2 barges, and the president of that group, John Hamill, says, "I'd like to go 3 barges, I think." So, but they didn't go 3 barges this year. But they have the 2 barges. The fireworks are spectacular. That will be on the 19th, which is the Saturday night. And it's just a great, great time for families. And really, for me, as mayor of the city, it's just a great way to expose people to Revere Beach. You know, this isn't the Revere Beach that people may remember from 15, 20 years ago. The DCR has done a tremendous job and made a tremendous commitment to maintaining the beach, and it's never looked so good. It's a place where people aren't afraid to come down to anymore because, you know, it's clean. They can go, you know, we see the sanitizers out in the sand. You know, you don't have to worry, you know, it's just very, very well kept. We beef up our police patrols in the summertime naturally, just by virtue of the pure numbers that go down to the beach. So it really is a great place to spend time with your family, or to go down, have a slice of pizza or an ice cream.
Yeah, so it's going to be another great event returning. And then, of course, we have the bocce tournament coming up in August as well, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very competitive. I've never participated in the bocce tournament other than sponsoring a team. And my team, I have to say, has always performed extremely well. So they're seasoned veterans, the Iovanas and the Danuccios. They do a terrific job, and so I go down to cheer them on
So you
a
have
little
ringers.
bit. I have, well, you know what? If you pay the $200 to get in the bocce tournament, you're allowed to bring ringers. So you know.
And another event that's coming up, and it's coming up soon, I think it's the 26th of this month, and it's going to be a benefit concert in memory of Gary Chaffee, who unfortunately died of melanoma, if I remember correctly, and there's going to be skin testing and screening and so forth, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be obviously a very bittersweet event. Gary Chaffee was a long-standing, terrific employee for the city of Revere who unfortunately lost his battle with melanoma. So this concert, which will feature his son in the band, his band, That's That, will be performing, and we will have skin screenings that will be done. We will have a research van that will be right here at the American Legion. The concert again is on Thursday, June 25th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll be blocking off part of the street out here between City Hall and the American Legion. It's going to be a real great tribute to Gary and a real opportunity for people to come out, see a great show, see a great concert in memory of Gary, and also get themselves tested, because unfortunately melanoma is one of the fastest growing cancers that you know we have to deal with. Yeah. You know, it's a very important event, and at the same time it can be a very fun event as well.
And this is another Department of Recs event. Revere TV is going to be there as well.
Revere TV,
event,
as they always do, Revere TV has been a terrific partner with the city. All of our major events that we have, and even not so major events, Revere TV seems to be there. So I'm very, very grateful, you know, to have such a high quality team of professionals that helps us get messages out throughout the year and really, you know, provide a real true community service.
Yeah. Well, that's what public access TV is all about, yeah?
Absolutely.
All right, well, great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. There was one other subject I wanted to bring up before we come to a close on this. And I read recently about rehabs that were taking place in the Shirley Ave area, and I think there were abandoned properties that the city is involved in rehabbing that will then be rented out to low-income families. Is that it?
Yeah, it's
I
you
thought
know,
it was
for
quite a project. And you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's our public housing department. You know, is you know, as a product of the city, has done a terrific job in identifying funding and you know, you know, working with distressed properties that have been taken off the rolls as maybe vacant pieces of property, rehabbed, refurbished, and then put into the housing stock that we so desperately need. One of the biggest requests that my office gets, sad to say, is requests for housing. I mean, we just have a real housing shortage, and so as we undertake these apartment projects, you know, that we have over the years, you know, it's because there is a real lack of housing.
Yep.
And so hopefully, I mean, if you look at it kind of globally in a larger picture, you know, it's my hope that as these apartment developments come online, a lot of these overcrowded houses that people complain about because there's, you know, 5, 6, 7 vehicles parked there. Well, they want to stay close by the family. A lot of people want to stay, you know, close by. But if you don't have a housing stock where people can live, then they're forced to kind of coexist with numerous family members. If we can give people an option to expand out into different housing units, available housing units, it's my hope that that may have some sort of a trickle-down effect in conjunction with our safe housing program to you know, to kind of clean up these neighborhoods and make them you know, as livable as we possibly can. And again, that all plays to the quality of life that we strive for people that live in this city.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's a great thing that's happening there. I mean, putting the abandoned properties to some good use.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this month's conversation. So we look forward to doing another one on the beach, I think, in about another month.
I'm looking forward to seeing you down the beach. That's typically one of my favorite meetings that I have with you and Revere TV. It's always a very festive environment, and as we know, you know, we've earned it this year. This winter was not easy, so I'm looking forward to these summer months.
I think everybody is. Dan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Well, for Revere TV and for Mayor Dan Rizzo, until next month, take care.